today to do my Jurassic Park movie review. I have to be honest, I was looking forward to this movie review so much because I grew up loving this movie, and as a teen and now adult, having read the book, I adore that Jurassic Park book, and it's just, I was so pumped to get to watch it this week. In fact, I watched it like 4 times because I needed to make my script, and I just needed to watch it 4 times, and there's nothing wrong, and it's all completely normal that I needed to watch it 4 times. This movie came out a couple years after I was born, so clearly I didn't watch it like right when I was a kid, like right when it came out, but my parents really loved this movie, so I watched it a lot growing up because of that. So I have some very nostalgic ties to the movie and kind of like what it means to me to watch it, because it does give me a very like kind of warm familial sense when I watch it. Even after reading the book, I adore the movie. Like, they did change some things around, but they just did such a good job with it that even the things that were cut or changed, I have no problem with them. And with this out of the way, I will just give you a quick reminder here. This is kind of a spoiler-ish review. I'm going into it assuming you've read the book and or know the concept of the movie. So I'm not going to be like spoiling everything, but I'm not really going to be pulling punches for some of the minor stuff. And with that, my likes and dislikes. My first like is the characters. They were just as competent as they were in the book. And although some of the characters were changed, like the most noticeable to me was John Hammond. In the book, he's like, money over children. Children are just a benefit of making money because I want to make money from this project. And in the movie, they have him being like this child, like having this like sense of childlike glee where it's like, I don't care about the money. That's not what this is about. This is about giving the kids an experience of a lifetime, and the money is just a happy side effect of that situation. And having like the two contrasts was really interesting, especially since I think those are like the two extremes that would end up building a park like he built. My second like is that the pacing was really good. It was like the book, as the stakes started rising, the pace started increasing to match, and it stayed really well matched the whole way through, which was really awesome. I mean, the ending is kind of cheesy, but in the movie, and it wasn't in the book, but it's just how it went, and that ending translated a lot better to the silver screen with this movie than the book's ending would have. And my third like about this movie is the practical effects, because oh dang, were these some amazing, and I mean amazing practical effects. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Triceratops, all of like the hatchery, it was just insane. They did such a good job. And these effects truly stand the test of time. Don't get me wrong, the CGI dinosaurs look like trash now, especially since the version I watched is like the HD remake or whatever, or the HD update or whatever you want to call it. And so you can super tell when it's a CGI dinosaur, but even that isn't that bad for the time. And even now it doesn't look that bad. It's just the fuzziness around the edges and just kind of the colors and stuff makes it a little bit dated. But overall, the effects in this movie were absolutely insane. And I cannot get over how good of a job they did with all of it. The first one is I wish they kind of expanded on the legal stuff a little bit more, like why Dennis Nedry was looking and taking these DNA vials, and why someone approached him to do so. Like, they kind of gloss over it in with like him having money issues, but in the book there's a lot more kind of behind the scenes, people trying to get an idea of what John Hammond is doing because they're trying to regulate cloning and things related to molecular genetics and that aspect. And so even though the movie made sense without it, I kind of wished a little bit more had been added to it, because I felt like it would have given a little bit more context to the legal side, like why that lawyer was there, why Nedry was involved, all that jazz. My second negative is the lack of all the extra science. And while I understand why it wasn't added, I really do miss some of the extra stuff because there's a bunch of things like, oh, we know exactly how many dinosaurs there are, but they had like a system that produced false positives. It was like a self-fulfilling, the program they wrote essentially ended up being like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it always saw what they wanted it to see, and just stuff like that was really interesting. And some of the ways they explain the cloning and how they spliced all the DNA together and all that. And it's just, there's a lot of that I really missed. Because it just, like, I get it, it didn't translate over really well, but there's so many places you could fit like little bits of it in, and whatever. I'm just sad. And my third negative, this one's probably a little bit more spoilery, was when Dennis Nedry left and had put his his Trojan horse in the code. That was not as big a deal as it was frustrating in the book because Arnold, I can't remember his first name, he was like an ex-military engineer of some kind with experience coding. And he was completely capable of going through the code and picking out and figuring out what the white rabbit that Dennis Nedry said in the code was and how to kind of fix it. Everything that happened afterwards where he had, like, the power went out and stuff, that was pretty close to the story, but it made me so upset that you had the absolute, like, the legend, Samuel L. Jackson, in a position like that. And he didn't get to exercise any of Arnold's, like, super capable features that were really exciting to watch. But whatever. I'll let it go. That's all I have for my likes and dislikes this time. I'm going to roll forward into the characters here. Although they weren't necessarily as capable as they were in the book, all of the characters, especially like the scientists, experts that they brought in, remained like pretty capable and like just not, I don't even want to say cunning, but they understand how to survive because of the type of work they do. They're in more dangerous environs. And I do love that they still kind of kept Ellie Sattler not being ignored by Grant. Like, when she speaks about something, he does pay attention. Most of the other men also seem to respect her and her intelligence, especially the large animal vet who works on the dinosaurs, Dr. Harding. That being said, it didn't feel like as prominent as it was in the book. Like, she was like the men were a lot more in awe of her in the book. I also just want to note, like I mentioned in my likes, there were a few characters that had been changed. So like Ian Malcolm was a little changed in terms of like what happened with him. Same with John Hammond's personality was completely different. Grant hates kids in the movie, which seems kind of dumb because he's the one who liked the kids at the Wonder of the Kids, and I wish that he'd kept that because it would have been a lot more palatable, him being stuck with the kids, in my opinion. And honestly, the casting was just A+ here. They did such a good job with everybody, and everybody just really fit the role and brought them to life. I love me some Jeff Goldblum, especially sexy, sort of topless Jeff Goldblum. I mean, my thumbnail says it all, really. And now for my quick wrap-up. So in terms of a movie rating, I really struggled with this because I felt like I couldn't necessarily give it a 5 out of 5 because nostalgia is probably coloring my vision. And so I was like, maybe I should roll it back to like a 4.5. And then I went, no, fuck it. This is my review. 5 out of 5. I love this movie. It has such a special place in my heart for me just because of how much I watched it growing up, but also just because it's incredibly well done. The effects are amazing. The casting is brilliant. And the direction was just phenomenal because you never, like, yes, all the actors are talented, but they got the perfect direction for how to bring these characters to life. And even though I complained about the lack of science, the science was simplified in such a way that made it like really accessible for an audience who had never read the book and who had minimal knowledge of what the science behind cloning and molecular genetics really was. I seriously cannot stress to you guys how much I enjoy this movie and how much of it is due to just how the movie was done. The practical effects were just brilliant. And the story, and if you guys haven't watched it at this point, I am so sorry that you've missed out on this masterpiece. And if you have watched it and haven't liked it, I am sorry that you did not get the same enjoyment out of it as me, and that listening to me rave about it is probably hurting your soul. But we're allowed to like or dislike things independently of each other. And with that, I'm going to roll over to my book to movie rating. I couldn't give this as high a mark as I wanted. There was so much that translated over really well, and all the decisions they made in the adaptation didn't take away from what was like the overall story. So even though there were a few things I disagreed with, overall I think it was really well done, and is allowing me to give this kind of like a 4 out of 5 in terms of adaptation. The pacing stayed the same. A lot of the characters stayed the same, even if a few outcomes for them changed. But the story overall and like the consequences and the fallout of what was happening remained very, very similar. And that really just lent the same air and the same sense of enjoyment from one to the other. Like, this isn't one of the adaptations where if you like the book, you're not going to like the movie, or if you like the movie, you're not going to like the book. They're similar enough that if you've read or watched one, you should try the other. Because I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And like my really only remotely upsetting dislike for this was just that they didn't have as much science as I think they could have fit in. There could have been other places they could have put it without being too info dumpy or too dry. That being said, it was still like a good science fiction thriller action movie, and it was just a good time. And if you haven't watched it, I think you should. It's just a good movie. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.